Good evening. I'm Kelda Yoon. Hundreds of cyclists converged on Queen's Park tonight, demanding the Ford government reverse course on a controversial bill that it introduced earlier this week. The new legislation would allow the province to oversee cycling infrastructure, including the power to remove already installed bike lanes where it sees fit. Dale Manukduk has the story.
Doug Ford, stay in your lane!
Hundreds of cyclists and a handful of politicians gathered outside of Queen's Park to voice their opposition to the Ford government's Bill 212. It would give the province oversight over any new bike lane infrastructure across the province.
That is not acceptable. Safe streets save lives. They're installed for a reason, and the primary reason is safety. An assault on safety, which is what it is if you rip out safe streets, that's an assault on every Ontarian because this bill will apply across the province.
The Premier says the province won't just have the rubber stamp on new cycling infrastructure, it's going to remove existing ones.
We need to and will remove and replace existing bike lanes on primary roads that are bringing traffic in our cities to an absolute standstill.
I think that's crazy. I mean, we already invested in that. Keep it.
I think it's outrageous. I think taxpayer money could be better spent on healthcare and schools.
When asked to specify which roads in Toronto, the Ministry of Transportation said, "We all know which bike lanes are causing further congestion across our city. Those are the ones we'll be focusing on as we work through the review process." But Global News is reporting that Ford is already keyed in on Bloor Street, Yonge Street, and University Avenue's Hospital Row. Two of those streets the Premier pointed out in September.
You go down on Hospital Row, University Avenue, paramedics are trying to get someone to the hospital as quickly as possible. They take out a lane of traffic, put bike lanes in there. It's cut down to one. It's jammed like crazy. Go on Bloor Street that they've disrupted all the businesses there.
I think Ford is very dumb to get rid of bike lanes. People need them to live.
According to police data, 6 cyclists have died on Toronto's roads so far this year, but bike lanes have remained controversial, with many residents pushing back against them. Some cyclists don't believe the government's decision has anything to do with reducing traffic.
It's absolutely not about traffic congestion. It's all politics. It's a political game. He's not governing. He's just basically politicking for the next election.
Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow, an avid cyclist, tells CBC Toronto, ripping up our roads like this will make people less safe, make traffic worse, and put lives at risk. Full stop. I challenge the Premier to talk to people who have lost loved ones on our roads and hear their stories. Chow says traffic congestion in the city is partially the province's fault for failing to deliver on major transit projects like the Eglinton Crosstown LRT. She says the province should tackle congestion and keep people safe at the same time. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
The Bank of Canada has gone big with its latest interest rate cut, dropping its trend-setting policy rate by 0.5 percentage point.
We took a bigger step today because inflation is now back to the 2% target, and we want to keep it close to the target.
The bank's overnight rate now stands at 3.75%. The central bank says its job has shifted from lowering inflation to maintaining it around its 2% target. The bank is also forecasting inflation will stay in that range into 2026. Macklem says more cuts can be expected as long as the economy evolves in line with forecasts. Today's interest rate cut is being touted as positive news for people looking to buy a home or rent here in Toronto, one of the most expensive cities in the country. But as Chris Glover tells us, some say they're skeptical it will be enough to make a difference.
At this Leslieville salon, the interest rate drop of 50 basis points is the cut some had been hoping for.
I'm hoping that it will help young people who want to buy a house with the lower interest rates.
Back in 1983, Christine Shane's first mortgage was 13%, but that Toronto home only cost her $40,000.
The house was not like 5 times my salary, my yearly salary like they are now. So, I mean, honestly, my heart goes out to young people because I really think that this does not help them at all.
Look no further than her 29-year-old hairstylist.
Half a point percentage doesn't really make a dent in it when I have to make a down payment of $300,000.
It's still unbelievably expensive to buy a home. It's still very hard to buy at today's interest rates, even with the cuts.
Broker John Pisala says it'll likely take until next spring and a couple more rate cuts for the trickle-down impact to spur on more home sales. But ultimately, this stretch of rate cuts, he says, should help first-time buyers all the way up to long-time home owners who have felt stuck for years.
People are more confident that their current home is going to sell, which is a big concern today. A lot of people don't want to upsize because they don't know if their current home is going to sell because the market is so slow. So more activity is going to help both segments.
Yeah, it's a good news, but I renewed a couple of weeks back.
Even some people locked in at higher rates are seeing the bigger picture.
It's a good news for the economy, right? People will start spending more money, like buying things.
On social, the Premier advocated for the Bank of Canada to keep cutting. Livelihoods depend on it, he said.
That's going to help stimulate the economy.
3.75%, yeah, keep going down more.
Mayor Chow is hopeful lower interest rates will result in landlords freezing rents. And she has a message to Toronto developers.
Please build, because I know there are builders out there that have gone all the zoning, the city have approved, they got the land, they're ready. They just need to get the shovel in the ground. Do it now.
But for some, it already feels too late.
I'll never be able to buy in Toronto. Yeah, the housing market's pretty awful, unfortunately.
The fear is a lot of young people may follow suit, cut and run on Toronto altogether before interest rates are cut enough to make a difference. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Renovictions have long been an issue in our city, and that's when a landlord evicts a tenant to do renovations in order to jack up the rent for the next tenant. Well, after working to combat the practice for years, the city says it finally has a new bylaw to address the issue. Ali Chiasson has the story.
This new bylaw, in a nutshell,
renovations, yes, but evictions, no.
It's to crack down on renovictions.
This bylaw will protect tenants from needless evictions. It will end the practice of using renovations as an excuse to evict tenants so that they could escape the rent control law,
which limits how much a landlord can increase rent year over year. Once the unit is unoccupied, renovated or not, they can charge much more. It's something Councillor Gord Perks has seen a lot of in his riding of Parkdale High Park.
It's been a cruel and unfair and unjust way of treating people in the City of Toronto who rent their homes.
So here's how it'll work. Landlords looking to renovate their units will have to pay a $700 license fee. They need to have building permits ready, including a report from an engineer or architect agreeing that the unit needs to be vacant for the repairs. If a tenant chooses to return after the reno, the landlord needs to plan to find another place for the tenant to stay for a similar rent. Or, if that's not possible, they can pay the difference or rent gap between the cost of the old place and the temporary unit the tenant moves into. If the tenant chooses not to return, the landlord must pay a lump sum equal to 3 months of that rent gap. The landlord will also have to pay for moving fees, and if the bylaw is violated, there's a $100,000 fine. How do landlords feel about this?
Well, we didn't like it. This is disproportionately affecting small landlords because it's understood that you might target a large corporation who owns a building and they may have to do large renovations, and maybe they do have an ultimate motivation to try to evict some or many of these tenants. But a small landlord is not in that kind of position. And don't we want these properties to be updated?
Tenant advocates, meanwhile,
I am very satisfied, or I hope the bylaw will mean that nobody has to face a renoviction again. It is horrible to lose your home, to be displaced from your community.
The report is ready to go to committee next week. Then it goes to City Council, where it will be parsed over and perhaps picked apart in November. The goal is to have this bylaw implemented by July 31st, 2025. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Doug Ford is telling the LCBO to find an Ontario-based supplier for its soon-to-be reintroduced paper bags. But the Premier's directive, coming weeks after the Crown Corporation already signed a deal with a Quebec bag maker. As Clara Pasica tells us, the process has some at Queen's Park shaking their heads.
Weeks after the LCBO confirmed a nearly $11 million contract with Rosenblum Inc., a Quebec producer for paper bags, the Premier yesterday sent the LCBO a letter directing the Crown Corporation to initiate a new tender process as soon as possible that will be limited to Ontario suppliers, also saying the LCBO's recent decision to source paper bags from a company outside Ontario goes against our government's direction. Finance Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy provided that direction.
I'm deeply disappointed that we've got lots of great Ontario forest products companies. So we've been very clear. We want them to use Ontario companies, respecting trade rules, and I think Ontario companies are the best around.
The minister's letter to the LCBO was dated 3 months after the request for quotes went out. One group is applauding the government stepping in now to help their sector.
There are also a lot of northern, rural, and Indigenous communities that depend on the prosperity of the sector. They're dependent on the local mill for employment and tax revenue and GDP. And if we don't start supporting these made in Ontario supply chains, all of these communities are at risk. And we're in a very difficult spot right now in the sector for some market segments. And I think the Premier's decision to promote Ontario-made forest products is the right one for Ontario.
But some of the government's critics say meddling with the Crown Corporation's decision is suspicious.
The most important question is, when it comes to Doug Ford, what friend, what insider wants that contract? That's what this is all about.
The government denies that characterization.
We won't get involved as dictating which company gets a contract.
The NDP leader says this is a mistake that could have been avoided.
I don't know how much that's they've wasted in time and money, and I don't know what it's going to take to break that deal. What we need is a Ontario first procurement plan and process.
The request for proposals that Rosenblum bid on listed a 2-year term. In an email to CBC this morning, a spokesperson for the LCBO said a contract with Rosenblum Inc. remains in place, but we will initiate a new tender process that will be limited to Ontario suppliers at the soonest available opportunity. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
York police are asking for the public's help in identifying a vehicle of interest that may be related to a fatal shooting in Markham this weekend. Now, this white GMC Envoy, believed to be a 2002 to 2009 model, allegedly fled the scene of a shooting at 14th Avenue and McCowan Road on Saturday evening. It happened just after 6:30. A 44-year-old Parthipan Penchalingam was pronounced dead on scene on the driveway. Police are searching for at least one suspect who was last seen wearing dark clothing. York police also have a warning for Markham drivers, advising them to be extra cautious while driving at night. Now, this comes after more than a dozen instances of rocks being hurled at moving vehicles, in some cases resulting in serious injuries. Tyler Cheese has the latest.
York Regional Police are reporting 2 separate instances of rocks being thrown at moving vehicles. Around 1 a.m. on Saturday, a rock was reportedly thrown from another vehicle near 16th Avenue in Mingay. The next, about 30 minutes later, on Stouffville Road near McCowan.
The fact that somebody is going around, even if it is multiple people, going around throwing rocks through people's windshields when they're driving late at night is something that should concern everybody right across the GTA.
These incidents come in the wake of the OPP reporting 11 similar occurrences in the same area over the last month. The first one, on September 20th, resulted in a 61-year-old man and a 62-year-old woman being hospitalized. The man is still in hospital.
That person's still in critical condition, and the other occupant is facing a lengthy recovery.
Those previous incidents being investigated by the OPP happened along Highway 48 in Markham. Police aren't able to say if all of these events are related, but York Police are coordinating with the provincial force.
As soon as we received these incidents, we obviously, being aware of what happened with the OPP, reached out to them to talk to them about what suspect information, what sort of information that they also have. And now we will still continue to investigate.
Investigators say drivers should be extra vigilant if they're driving through the area late at night.
The incidents that we've identified have been in the late into the evening or the early morning hours, specifically at nighttime usually. And often it's unsuspecting people driving to and from home that this seems to be happening to, which is It's extremely concerning.
Police are also asking drivers to be on the lookout for anything that might help with their investigation. They're also looking for any dash cam footage captured in the area at the times the incidents occurred. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Markham.
Welcome back. Mayor Olivia Chow visited the kitchen at Mark Garneau Collegiate Institute to learn more about the school's lunch program today.
I am so proud of the students here. They learn to grow the food, cook the food, and eat together.
The program teaches students how to cook and prepare healthy meals while helping to fight food insecurity. Every day, the program serves 200 free lunches to students. Earlier this month, City Council voted in favor of advancing efforts towards a universal student food program. It would provide a free mid-morning meal to students by the 2026-2027 school year. According to the federal government, an estimated 1 in 4 children in Canada do not get enough food. The TTC is considering banning electric bikes and scooters on its vehicles during the winter due to the fire risk that they pose. The issue will be discussed at the transit agency's next board meeting. Lane Harrison has the details.
If this ban is approved, it would mean that e-bikes and e-scooters would be totally prohibited on the TTC from November 15th to April 15th of each year. The exception being that people with disabilities who have wheelchairs or other mobility devices that have lithium-ion batteries in them would still be allowed to bring those on the TTC. Now, the concern around e-bikes and e-scooters comes because of those lithium-ion batteries that power them. Now, we have data from Toronto Fire that shows that from 2022 to 2023, there was a 90% increase in fires started by lithium-ion batteries in Toronto. And one of them in 2023 came in late December on a TTC train that was stopped at the subway station at Shepherd and Yonge. That fire filled the train with smoke and flames, and the TTC told me that that was really a wake-up call for them, that something had to be done about lithium-ion batteries on their vehicles. TTC spokesperson Stuart Green explains why exactly that ban has to come during the winter months.
We did some analysis and we looked at the batteries. They're particularly volatile in the cold weather. Both they're prone to having incidents when it's very cold or when salt gets into them. And as we know, Toronto, we salt the roads. So the opportunities for something to get in and damage these batteries and cause a fire and explosion increases significantly in the winter.
Now, these bikes are particularly popular with delivery drivers who are delivering food that people have ordered through different apps. One advocate for gig workers told me that a lot of these drivers come downtown on the TTC to do deliveries throughout the day. He says that they're being punished for an issue that isn't their fault.
It devastate their lives because they're not going to be eligible for unemployment because of the lack of recognition in the Employment Standards Act. There's no recourse for them to find any way for the platforms that they work for to keep them employed. If they can't get to their market, they can't work. So that means no money, no food for the family. They're going to be devastated.
The TTC isn't the first transit agency in the GTA to have to deal with these issues. Metrolinx already has rules for bringing e-bikes onto GO Transit. Their riders have to show that their e-bike has a battery with a certain certification before they're allowed to bring them on the train. And some delivery drivers that I spoke to in downtown Toronto feel that rules like that are a better approach than an all-out ban.
It's a living for people, right? So, I mean, because these are like GO Transit inspect bikes too, so they're safe. So there's no reason.
TTC also can just give us a tag like this, like inspect the battery, and after that they can also provide a tag like this.
The TTC told me that they also considered bringing in rules instead of an all-out ban. They looked at having bags that people could put their batteries in when they get on the train, or having certain parts of trains that the bikes would be housed in. But they realized through consultations with riders that people were frustrated about having the bikes on the trains and in the streetcars. They felt that they were tripping hazards and they were taking up space that could be used for other riders. So they decided that a ban was the simplest way forward. Now, this ban, of course, isn't official yet. It'll be voted on by the TTC board at their board meeting next Tuesday. Lane Harrison, CBC News, Toronto.
And Colette, yeah, it's going to be a little cooler the next few days, but we've had such a good stretch that we forget this is seasonal.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. I mean, we've had such an amazing run here. And, today was basically our transition day as we're going to be heading back right to kind of seasonal conditions in terms of the temperatures, highs and lows. So if we look at the upper wind pattern of the jet stream, we had this big broad ridge over top of us and it was really stuck in place for several days. And now we're seeing this trough here, and that's allowing that cooler air to stretch down across the lower Great Lakes, kind of lining up right here with the cold front as it's been moving through. That just being the leading edge of this new air mass that's coming in as our winds shifted direction around towards the west-northwest, kind of opening that door for this cooler air. So today's highs, I hope you enjoyed it, and the last several days, 21 degrees for Toronto and for the nation's capital, 20 in Kingston, and 20 for Windsor and Chatham, Kent, and Sarnia and London. Okay, some high teens, Barrie as well, where the front came a little bit sooner, and so then that temperature was falling through the afternoon hours. Now as we get that cooler air, that flow across the Great Lakes, we do get into a little bit of cloud cover just associated with that, but not much else with that. So as we go into the overnight hours and for tomorrow, we are talking about dry conditions, and we will get back into some sunshine here other than where we get the lake effect there with a bit of cloud mixing in. So looking good for Thursday. Now Friday, certainly for the GTA, starting off with some fine and fair conditions and some sunshine, and maybe early morning in southwestern Ontario as well, but the clouds will thicken up there pretty quickly and by afternoon be moving across the Golden Horseshoe and into eastern Ontario. And along with that cloud cover, we will have some rain showers, a little more widespread, just a little more moisture than what we have at the front that went through today. But take heart, because once that swings on through, we'll have that pattern where we clear out again and we get some decent conditions going into the weekend. So a look at those winds. Yeah, they were a little blustery as that front's been going by, but now we're finding that they'll be backing off as we go through the day on Thursday, and in fact sort of be flipping around in direction just because they'll be lighter in nature. Some of those overnight temperatures will probably slide a little more than down to about 6 for Toronto, in that neighborhood, and then we'll certainly see cooler nights after tonight as we get into this new air mass. 6, 13 for tomorrow, and then just looking ahead with those showers on Friday, but that weekend, seasonal, some sunshine, not bad at all.
I'm liking that. Thanks so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks for joining us.